12 months work gone into it. Got a few problems. Nothing great. A little bit of weight transference need to go from the back to the front. Probably being created through the 45-gallon fuel tank in the back. But basically overall, she's come up pretty well. Handling is good, and the capability of the car I think is all there for a vehicle that's been built for Australia, and now we'll try it out in the big event. There is a place in this sort of event for a skilled amateur crew with the capability of doing their own thing and building their own vehicle to compete in what is probably the roughest, toughest event that's ever been put on the world. I think basically that we've got a system that will work, certainly no arguments in amongst it. I'll just divorce my wife and kill my son. All we've got to do now is hope that our engineering expertise on our strengthening systems and that will stand up to the ruling event. We certainly haven't tried that on the Simpson Desert or over the Kimberleys, but we've given her a fair test.
What began as the salvage shell of an XW Ford Falcon was painstakingly restored by Peter MacArthur and his crew and modified with considerable endurance ability. This program examines the unhidden modifications made to the vehicle. There were 5 reasons for the modifications. Strengthening, safety, reliability, trial information, comfort. Good lighting is essential for safe driving and spot-on navigation. A Markle Ampulux twin reflector system was fitted to enable this, and Markle 902 long-range driving lights for spot beams. Wheel clearances needed to be increased to avoid bottoming out on the rough terrain ahead. The inside of the guard was cleared, a rollover lip was moulded into the wheel arch. The 12mm return section was beaten flat, then flared over the wheel. The wheel clearance on an unmodified XW Falcon is noticeably smaller. Rear wheel clearances were also increased. A special frame was made to hold the spare radiator on the boot lid. The frame doubled as a grab rail for a crew member to hold while standing on the rear bumper to provide additional traction. Easily removable sand mats were fixed onto the rear bumper bar. These could be used for traction over difficult terrain. Rear reversing lights were attached. These could be repositioned for driving through fog. The 204-litre fuel tank in the boot would prove indispensable on the long hauls in between fuel stops. The capacitance tube connected to the tank was installed to feed information into the oscillating unit, which relays information to the fuel gauge set into the dashboard. An engine compartment with quite a number of differences. Compared to the V8 engine compartment of an unmodified Falcon. The strengthening bar was installed to keep the sides of the car together. These anchoring points for the bar were bolted firmly to withstand the hardest of bumps and shakes. The thermofluid coupling fan has a bimetal strip which controls the fan speed at varying temperatures, thus absorbing less engine power. The water bottles and pumps service both the windscreen and the headlight washers. The lightweight sports air cleaner is of the throwaway variety. The crew expected to use at least 12 of these during the trial. The car was completely rewired, using separate fusing for all circuits. All circuits are supplied from an aircraft-style buzz bar and 9 relays. The fuse panel was installed between the near side firewall and the engine. The dashboard was designed to fall forward for easy accessibility to the electrical components. This way, electrical problems could be quickly rectified without having to crawl underneath the dashboard. A few modifications were made to the rear interior of the car. The high lift jack tucked under the back seat area. A very comfortable resting seat for the third crew member, and the spare tyre area. The brake line and wiring were relocated internally. Two maintenance-free, sealed type batteries were also located in the rear interior. These 12-volt batteries are switchable. They could be run separately or together for higher capacity. The isolator switch was installed between the front seats for this purpose. The hydraulic pressure limiting valve, situated behind the spare tyre area, would prevent the rear wheels from locking up under hard braking. The dashboard of the unmodified Falcon bears very little resemblance to this. It was redesigned with special safety padding and a full set of instruments essential for trials. The Rolvi computer was installed with a digital readout system indicating distance, time and average speed in kilometres per hour. A handheld trip reset was also included. The instrument panel incorporated gauges for oil pressure and temperature, speedometer, ammeter, tachometer and water temperature. Controls for lights, windscreen wipers and horn were duplicated, attached to the roll bar and operable from the back seat. The aluminium alloy roll cage was fitted inside the car to protect the occupants in case of a rollover. A number of modifications were made underneath the car. The front suspension was strengthened by reinforcing the lower suspension arms, by fitting heavy-duty stabilizer bars and radius rods. These components on an unmodified car are less robust. At the rear axle area, a Detroit locker differential was fitted. Certain strengthening modifications were also made to the rear axle housing. On an unmodified vehicle, these features are not included. A heavy-duty stabilizer bar was added to the rear axle housing for firm support. Strengthening ribs were welded onto the differential casing to reduce distortion. Heavy-duty Munro-Wiley shockers were fitted, and radius rods to provide better location of rear axle housing. It minimises rear axle wind-up and rear wheel tramp. The exhaust pipe was modified to allow extra rear axle housing movement without pipe damage. And brake drums with cooling fins were fitted. A strengthening plate was welded between the floor pan and body cross member. The plate was angled to minimise the possibility of catching on obstructions. The spot welding was strengthened using seam welding throughout the body. The modifications examined in this program are summarised under the headings: engine, body strengthening, seam welding, rear bumper, roll cage, front and rear end modifications, wiring, rear interior accessories, spare radiator, instrumentation, lights, fuel tank. On the second day of the trial, cars arrived at Kaipo Forest, South Australia for their run on the rough and hilly stretch. After this, there would be 12 days and 19,000 kilometres left.
Well, we came 84th out of a start of about 200, which I suppose is as good as we could expect. Our preparation that we talked about earlier on turned out to be fairly well spot on. Our strengthening program not too many problems. A small problem, well, a large problem with our front end. We put the strengthening caps on the shockers, and we misjudged how much work they'd have to do. This created some problems, which we ended up solving in Adelaide. The motor, extremely good. We went the right way with the motor. The low torque that we were after, with a little bit of sacrifice of top speed, turned about to be okay. Reliability spot on. Gearbox okay. Differential and brakes extremely good. From the crew's point of view and the family aspect and being amateurs, quite good. We had our inter-car hassles, which all crews do. Swapping of drivers turned out to be okay, and we turned out as a very good navigator. I think our greatest problem would have been overall the lack of time to prepare or to check our preparation, and the lack of time to train our service crews. As the rally itself, I think the privateer is in trouble these days with escalation of costs against the factory teams and the enormous amount of money. But other than that, great event. I'm not divorced, so it must be all right, and I'm back in Adelaide again. We'll see you again.